No more bye weeks left. Fantasy playoffs are here, and that means you got to get it right. And that means LA Rams versus San Francisco 49ers. One team is going one way, one team is going the other way. One team has its stars healthy, one team can't get healthy. Let's talk Rams football first. G Bloom, I wonder which side they're on.
Yeah, I think that this is a game, kind of a pre-playoff game as we're getting into the fantasy playoffs. And much like the NFL teams, only one team is going to have a happy ending. Sorry, Joe. Only one team's going to have a happy ending to this season, and the rest of the teams will regret something or think about how it went wrong. Just like fantasy teams, if you haven't already regretted, I have a few teams I'm regretting a decision I made that made me miss the playoffs. Hopefully, you don't regret decisions that make you lose in the playoffs. If the 49ers lose, they're basically done. If the Rams lose, they've got an uphill battle. Let's just talk about Puka Nacua for a second. I mean, I don't think outside of Jamar Chase, any wide receiver is playing better than Puka Nacua right now. And as we've seen with Justin Jefferson, as we've seen with some of these receivers that start off at a very high level, they can get better in their second year. What else is yet to come for Nacua? And Stafford was hooking up with Cooper Kupp downfield last week, so you're not worried about him. Kyron Williams, not very efficient as a runner, did score twice. Offense is clicking now, so he's not just a safe play, but a play with some upside. And don't forget about Blake Corum. Not you're going to play him, but you're going to roster him as 29 carries for Kyron Williams, as they're not afraid of wearing him down. This is a great rivalry and a great coach rivalry, sees McVay and Shanahan. And these games tend to be unpredictable in the NFC West. And the San Francisco 49ers have been unpredictable as they've been either kicking ass like last week or getting their ass kicked. Sorry, Joe. That rarely happens in this matchup. So we'll see if San Francisco can keep their season alive in this one.
Who can you even trust from that side?
Jawan Jennings and George Kittle. And I mean, Debo Samuel, this is going to be interesting to watch because Debo Samuel saying, I'm just not getting the ball, but it's not that I'm struggling. But if you watch him, he's struggling.
He's
And
struggling.
he's struggling. I think Debo Samuel is one of the toughest calls this week because all 32 teams playing, he hasn't been doing anything. Even the last big week he had was based on a busted coverage. Could this be a game like the Rams and Bills that turn into a shootout and Debo Samuel gets pulled up by that? Or do you just go on the name value at this point and not what he's been doing lately? So I think that I'll probably nudge a few people away from Debo Samuel. And then Patrick Taylor, really? It just Izzy Abonaconda could play a role in this backfield. Lance Zierlein. See, Lance Zierlein pops up like once every 3 months to say something about fantasy or something that we can use very much in fantasy. He said, Izzy Abonaconda in this system could make some noise. That doesn't mean you should rush out and play him, maybe pick him up in a deep league, but that also is an obstacle for Patrick Taylor. And also with San Francisco's revival last week, was it just that the Bears were hibernating? That the Bear, you can only fire so many people in a season to actually raise morale. It didn't work last week for the Bears. They're facing a team coming in on a high in the Rams. So at least it's an interesting Thursday night game.
Are the Chiefs and Browns interesting? Starting with the Kansas City side, of course, with Isaiah Pacheco splitting time with Kareem Hunt, but getting most of the workload. Travis Kelsey getting some time split, a little bit more targets go to Noah Gray, but not many because he's still Travis Kelsey. And then they're still trying to figure out the wide receivers, and they've only got one loss.
Yeah, yeah, right. I think there was a stat I saw, Cease, that the Bengals and the Chiefs have trailed for about the same amount of clock time this year, like 230 minutes or so, which is really just wild. And of course, when the two teams play, they were straight up. One's going to go home. One's probably going to be the number one seed. Kansas City needs to win this game to stay in that number one seed spot, and they should. I mean, Cleveland really showing that the upset against the Steelers in the snow was more of the outlier, and because of that, you like Patrick Mahomes in this one. He's not the every week start, elite start, but you like him in this one because of the array of weapons he has. Not Marquise Brown yet, but maybe next week or maybe on Christmas against the Steelers, we're going to see Marquise Brown return to complicate this. But for now, it's not quite as complicated. Travis Kelsey should be in. Again, linebacker play. There's been some injuries there. So I think Kelsey is in. I think Noah Gray is a desperation tight end or a streaming tight end. I do think this is a game where Xavier Worthy could come through for us. There's been so many times he's been open deep, and Patrick Mahomes has been missing him. Just, waiting for the playoffs. I don't know. Maybe the fantasy playoffs. DeAndre Hopkins, more what the heck flex. Isaiah Pacheco, a flex. You get the idea here. Nobody really has a high ceiling in this offense. Maybe there's a reasonably high floor because of the Cleveland matchup. And because, Jameis Winston could always turn this into a high scoring game. It doesn't look like they're going to have any harsh winter weather in Cleveland this weekend.
Pat Mahomes misses him because he doesn't have any time because that line was not giving him
No,
time. And against the Browns, might lose some of that time. On the flip side of that, all right, Jerry Jeudy came back to earth last week, which we knew he would. Can't have a zillion yards every single week. But how do Jameis and company keep up with the Chiefs offense that's, probably not going to drop a lot of points? Again, everyone already knows and is aware this is a different Chiefs offense.
yeah, it is. And you're right to bring up Myles Garrett as maybe somebody who could make this into a boring fantasy game by wrecking drives for the Chiefs. Can Jameis Winston create drives? If he does, it's going to be Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku. Both of these guys are pretty much must plays at this point because Jameis Winston introduces a high ceiling just because of the way he plays the game. But Elijah Moore is more of a what the heck flex, even closer to a desperation play if this does turn into a defensive battle. And the backfield's pretty worthless here. If you expect the Chiefs to play from ahead, then maybe Jerome Ford's a better what the heck flex. If you think that Cleveland can hang, maybe Nick Chubb is a better what the heck flex, but it's basically a split backfield. And when they trail, it's more Ford than Chubb. So if you've got Njoku or Judy, to do Jameis Winston, a boom bust streamer. There's a lot of quarterback streamers. I would imagine if you're in the playoffs, though, you have someone better than Jameis Winston to play this week.
Okay, let's get to Cincinnati and Tennessee. We didn't get to review the Simpsons game, Bloom, because
Yeah,
it was Monday night. But all right, Lisa Simpson. I mean, Jamar Chase, the one in. Does T. Higgins bounce back in a big way? And then with Joe Burrow finishing the game in a knee sleeve, do they just run the ball? Khalil Herbert can do more. I'm not suggesting him as a what the heck flex, because he only gets like 1 or 2 touches a week. But it's like, is this a just monster Chase Brown game? It's the Titans. I don't care if it's
right.
on the road. They should beat up the Titans. And maybe, just maybe, as they keep their slim playoff hopes alive, maybe that means a lot of Brown this week.
Maybe. Chase Brown's a league winner at this point. So, we're not going to any questions on whether to play him. It's more of a question of how high do you rank him. Same with Jamar Chase, who is, I think I saw this morning that about 6 points per game higher than the number 2 wide receiver in PPR leagues. Just outrageous. Joe Burrow, the Burrow to Chase hookup, taking teams to the fantasy playoffs, probably helping them advance with Tennessee's weak defense. And we'll see about T. Higgins. You have to play him because of his ceiling, but you also wonder. There was some speculation. Hey, as the playoff hopes wane and Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, they do not have long-term contracts, that they start making business decisions. Actually, not even saying that in a negative way. I mean, it makes sense. Uh, Certainly, we're not seeing that from Chase. We'll see if that pattern follows from Higgins. You got to play him though, and for Tennessee, the best you can hope for is moving up in the draft order.
There you go. Tennessee with Will Levis banged up. Full disclosure, recording Wednesday morning. It is Wednesday morning, right, Bloom?
Yeah,
So Tony Pollard, sure, and then Nick Westbrook-Akine, I'm not sure
yeah.
because it was like it's hot. It was like Jerry Maguire. Everything was hot, and then it wasn't hot. He got fired, maybe fired from your starting lineup in your fantasy team. And hey, Calvin Ridley, it's a fantasy playoffs. I'm not going to be real excited about many Titans in my lineup.
Yeah, we've seen the Bengals over the last month look like one of the worst defenses in football, and when we saw them on Monday night, they weren't one of the worst defenses on Monday Night Football. They didn't elevate Cooper Rush to quarterback one for fantasy, so we don't expect them to do that for Will Levis or Mason Rudolph or whoever. You probably still play Calvin Ridley because of the possibility that Tennessee's going to have to actually open up the offense past 30 or 35 times. You probably still play Tony Pollard because he's running his heart out at this point. He's giving everything he's got for his team, and it's at least a flex play. You mentioned Nick Westbrook-Akine, the possible game-winning touchdown glancing off of his hands. So you see how far down the floor is when he's only catching two, not even two passes a game. Yes, last week. So I think that you're really playing with fire there, even though it is a good matchup for Cincinnati. We see Tennessee at this point starting to swirl down the drain, and you wonder, Brian Callahan, what do you really have to build around as this team looks forward?
Yeah, what do you have there? We'll figure it out. What can you get? That's for the offseason.
Mhm.
Commanders and Saints up next. Saints side is more interesting or sad, I
Yeah.
should say. We'll get there in a little bit. But let's talk Commanders football and Jaden and company going on the road down to your neck of the woods.
Yeah, down come on down. It's a little bit chilly here for New Orleans, but there's still gonna be a lot of festive times here. New Orleans does every day like a holiday anyway, so the holiday season is always a good time to be here, and especially whenever New Orleans is continuing to deteriorate. Even though they've been winning under Darren Rizzi without a starting quarterback, without Derek Carr, this is gonna be a tune-up game for Washington. It should be with this late bye, week 14. I know it messed up a lot of people's seasons if there was a key fantasy week with all these late buys. But you wonder, can Cliff Kingsbury make some adjustments? Maybe with Terry McLaurin, you're going to play him anyway, but move Terry McLaurin around, make it more simple to find him on plays. Brian Robinson should be in your lineup. Zach Ertz is a solid high floor tight end. Number one, he has been scoring touchdowns. We're going to watch Noah Brown and his situation with the rib injury he had going into the bye. He would be what the heck flex. Again, because the Saints defense can only hold for so long. They're probably going to be playing from behind in this one. So maybe that's the only reason you look at someone like Noah Brown. It's not a great play. But this should be a game where Washington looks rested and hopefully looks even more efficient than they did going into the bye.
Ben DiNucci got a job. Yeah.
Yeah. Source
Hey,
Ben DiNucci.
Ben DiNucci. I like that. Okay. Alvin Kamara, you're getting 30 touches. Kendry Miller, you're getting 15.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, like Juwan Johnson, sure, but no Derek Carr, probably not the rest of the year. I don't think that's been officially announced yet. But like, man, it's rough down
Yeah.
there in New Orleans.
Yeah, it's going to be rough. Jake Hayner, Spencer Rattler, doesn't matter. Uh, Alvin Kamara, like you said, he's in PPR. He's going to get you a lot of cheap points. Kendrick Miller is a desperation play. You're rostering him in case Kamara goes down after all of the work that he's had this year, all the punishment he's absorbed. Jawan Johnson, because of the quarterback change, is probably just a desperation play, even though he was coming on. Probably not going to bring back Chris Olave at this point. Like, what's the point? You would hate to see him suffer another concussion. So, even though the Saints are technically still alive, again, mostly a good opportunity for visiting fan bases to come down and enjoy Bourbon Street.
Okay, 4 games down, 4 games to go. Part one of the Week 15 preview here on the Audible. Cecil, Lammey, Sigmund, Bloom, Ravens and Giants, and Ravens side same as it ever was. Sigmund, and on the road against the Giants, it should be get everybody in your lineup that you can.
Yeah, these matchups just don't seem to be that intriguing this week, at least what we're going through so far. One of these games will probably throw us a curveball, but there's a lot of mismatches this week, which does introduce some unpredictability because with a mismatch like this, and Washington, New Orleans for that matter, and maybe even Cincinnati, Tennessee, maybe Kansas City, Cleveland, does your offensive pieces in your fantasy lineups get theirs before the game gets out of hand? That's the
Right.
worry here. Derrick Henry's going to get his. Lamar Jackson's going to get his. Zay Flowers is probably in your lineup because of the ceiling, but if he doesn't get his in the first half, it may not be there for the rest of the game because the Giants. It would be shocking. Well, I don't know how the Giants can keep up with the Ravens in this game. Fake punts and converting every fake punt and onside kick and get the onside kicks after you score. I don't know. Rashad Bateman, we're going to watch with a knee injury going into the bye. Probably not going to play him anyway. Mark Andrews should be in your lineup. But again, you better hope he scores in the first half because this is not going to be a competitive game.
No, not pretty at all. So, I mean, Malik Neighbors as a deep flex, Tyrone Tracy almost
Right.
the same thing. They're
Right.
saying Drew Lock will start if healthy enough.
Right.
So
Right.
again, Wednesday morning, and well, it's the Giants. So there you go.
Yeah, Malik Neighbors did enough. You want to see him get in practices so that that hip issue didn't flare up and he wasn't gnashing his teeth playing through it. But he did enough with Drew Lock last week and Lock threw like 49 passes. I would expect something similar this week. So that gives you some hope for Neighbors. And Tyrone Tracy got the garbage time. Well, it wasn't garbage time because the Saints only scored 14 points, but he got a touchdown last week and he's going to get check downs and he's being used 80% of the snaps like a lead back. And we know he has explosiveness. So in the second half, especially against a pretty prevent defense. Tyrone Tracy could do some things for us, but that's it. I mean, at least for the Giants season ticket holders, you get to watch Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. So that's worth the price of admission, right?
Sure, there you go. Let's talk Cowboys and Carolina. Much more excited about Carolina's side, although there is some sad news with the Panthers
Yeah.
that we will go over. But Rico Dowdle, guess all he does is get 100 yards now. Once the seal was broken, he's just going
Yeah.
to keep doing it. And against Carolina, it's a possibility that he could. Maybe CeeDee Lamb, instead of 93 yards, gets 100 yards this week. And Cooper Rush throws for a couple hundred, most of it to CeeDee. Let's discuss Cowboys and on the road against the Panthers.
Yeah, like you said, Rico Dowdle really coming on, and there's so many takes like this, Cease, and this goes along with your Windows theory that you're right and wrong. If you said don't take Rico Dowdle because the Cowboys' backfield's a mess, they're not going to run the ball efficiently anyway. You were right for about half, a little over half of the season. And then if you said no, Dowdle is clearly the best running back, and even though he might not be the best running back on any other team than the Cowboys, that's going to eventually allow him to take over this backfield and have fantasy value, even without Dak Prescott. So Dowdle's got to be in your lineup here. Carolina defense not doing great stopping the run. CeeDee Lamb, not as worried about his shoulder injury now after he had a solid game against the Bengals. You did see Luke Schoonmaker and Jake Ferguson split tight end snaps. So not really a tight end play here. Cooper Rush, desperation play in 2 quarterback superflex leagues. But you're right, Cease. It's Carolina. They've been playing good teams, Kansas City and Philadelphia. If the Super Bowl's Kansas City and Philadelphia again, no one would be surprised. And they took both of those teams down to the last play of the game. So a lot of things have changed. And again, Bryce Young falls into this too. If you said Bryce Young, too small, meek, no confidence, the NFL is going to devour him. Well, for about a month, you were right. If you said no, Bryce Young still has all the talent that made him the number one pick. Dave Canales is going to unlock that. You're going to see Bryce Young look confident. At times, look like one of the best quarterbacks on the field over the last 3 weeks. You're going to see that too.
Yeah, Bryce Young, fantastic. Why didn't they give Jonathan Brooks the Ricky Waters treatment? Why do it's the same knee now? Like that sucks. And for those who are not old heads like you and I, Ricky
Mhm.
Waters came out of Notre Dame with a broken leg and he didn't play as a rookie. And then when he did play, he had 1,000 yards every single season for like 10 years. So like Jonathan Brooks, amazing talent. Okay, rant over. I'm done bitching. Sorry, Joe. Let's talk about Carolina, who can put up that fight with Bryce Young. So happy for him, man. Go
Yeah.
get this win at home. I'd love to see
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, humility for Bryce Young here, and 2 quarterback superflex leagues. You're going to use him. Adam Thielen doesn't even matter the format as long as you
Yeah.
start 2 wide receivers. Adam Thielen looking tremendous out there. And a really neat clip. I don't know if we're going to see Jalen Coker again, but I saw a really neat clip of Jalen Coker with Adam Thielen saying, like, this is my guy. This is my idol, Coker saying, because he went from tryout player to NFL star, and Jalen Coker maybe on that same path, not necessarily in this game. But you mentioned the Jonathan Brooks situation. And I guess what was very quizzical about that is they were going hyper conservative, hyper conservative, hyper conservative. And then when the season was out of hand, well, let's let him play. And then he tears the same ACL. So does that mean next year we're not going to see him? So they go full hyper conservative. We don't really see him get to play a role for this team until year 3 of his rookie contract. But for now, if you have Chuba Hubbard, means you've got a running back that's going to get 20, 25 touches, maybe even more. Needs to be in your lineup as a running back too. So Chuba Hubbard, one of the big reasons fantasy teams got to the playoffs, maybe one of the big reasons they win a championship.
Let's talk Jets and Jaguars briefly
Yeah.
because it's Jets and Jaguars, but it's Jets now with a couple of running back options for you, maybe even a couple of wide receivers
Right.
options based on
Right.
what they did last week. It's like, thank you, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, and I guess thank you, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so odd. See, how can we possibly avoid Aaron Rodgers is actually inducing us to do this? Like we're all sitting home and armchair psychoanalyze everybody. My name is Sigmund. My show is on the couch. Check it out on Wednesdays on YouTube. But armchair psychoanalyzing Aaron Rodgers because did you get the feeling after last week's Cease that, you know, after all the performative theatrics and things, he still is at his heart a ball player that just wants to play ball, and he actually looked like he was playing an Aaron Rodgers style game for the first time. We saw a glimpse,
Who's
you
having
know.
fun?
Yeah, He looked and we saw a glimpse of it a few times earlier in the year. So what that means is Devontae Adams, maybe finally Garrett Wilson. Just as everything is starting to surface, Garrett Wilson's gonna ask for a trade in the offseason. Garrett Wilson should ask for a trade as soon as the Jets drafted him. But Garrett Wilson asking for a trade, but for fantasy teams, not a big reason you got to the playoffs, but maybe Aaron Rodgers is gonna lift him. Then you have this committee, and I think it is Isaiah Davis over Braylon Allen if Breece Hall doesn't play. This is another one of those situations where as soon as the Jets or there's an item out there the Jets aren't planning on shutting down Breece Hall, well, are they going to shut down Breece Hall? Because again, what is there to gain? One more year on his rookie contract. But Isaiah Davis doing a little more in the red zone, getting touchdowns each of the last 2 weeks. And is it impressive as Braylon Allen looked from a physical standpoint? Isaiah Davis also a pretty impressive back physically, spot size speed combination. So it is a running back by committee. Davis is the better half of it here. As you know, Jacksonville, their defense is still strong. Mac Jones, on the other hand, showing why, yeah, he's may not even be a backup quarterback after this year.
I don't know why we like to be Marco Polo in life or specifically in fantasy football, but I just
Hmm.
take great pride that we talked about Isaiah Davis 12 months ago
Sure.
when he's at the Shrine game because the kid can play. And I'm excited when young guys from programs that are mostly overlooked get a chance and they get to shine. That's why I love a guy like Malik Washington.
Hmm.
Put a pin in that. I'd rather talk about Malik Washington. I guess maybe I'll talk about him in the final game, but get through the Jaguars, please, Blue.
Yeah, Mac Jones to Brian Thomas Jr., and you saw Brian Thomas getting a lot of targets in the second half last week, so you're not afraid to play him. Tank Bigsby with 18 carries to, I think, 4 for Travis Etienne. Etienne involved in the passing game, so what the heck flex in PPR leagues? But if you think the Jags can go toe-to-toe here, and the Jags are the costly win out, getting out of playoff contention there, or I'm sorry, number one pick contention, maybe they could get back into it. But if you think this is going to be a game the Jags are competitive in, then Tank Bigsby could get, again, 18, 20 carries. He got the rushing touchdown last week. He's a flex, maybe even a running back too, depending on how the matchup goes. Evan Ingram, you know, 6 catches, 35 yards. Probably not a touchdown, but in PPR leagues, it'll do. It hasn't been the ceiling year we were hoping for after he was hot coming out of 2023. And yeah, it's the best matchup in the 12 Central Time, 1 p.m. Eastern. Is it Miami, Houston? Is that really the best game, the game we're looking forward to the most?
Hey, I mean, I guess hashtag maybe Miami and Houston. We're up to that, and there'll be some fantasy excitement again. Maybe
Right.
Jonu Smith. Can we trust Jalen Waddle? Sure, now we can. Tyreek Hill. Yep. The backfield is interesting as always with Tua running the show. How are you looking at the Dolphins this week on the road against those crafty Texans?
Yeah, and why is it we've got 5 late game seats? Tampa, Chargers, Indy, Broncos, Buffalo, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Philly. I would watch any of those games over any of these games. Why can't we get this spread out? I mean, with the games in Philadelphia and Detroit. Anyway, let's talk about the game that is the marquee game, marquee matchup. Miami trying to keep their season alive. Teron Armstead's hurt. That's when you're facing Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. Not a great week to be missing your stud left tackle. So we know Tua can get the ball out quickly. We know Mike McDaniels can scheme some things up here. Don't know if we're going to see a lot of downfield passing in this one, but you're still going to play Tyreek Hill. You're still going to play Jalen Waddle, who's been fine over the last 3 weeks. Tua is a boom bust streamer in this one. I don't even know if, even though he's been good for the last 3 weeks for fantasy, I don't know about this one because of the offensive line issues, because the Texans are rested. Jonnu Smith, if there wasn't overtime last week, he would have been a 0, but there was overtime and he wasn't a 0. He had a touchdown, 3 catches for 44 yards. If Tua is going to have to get the ball out quickly in this one, maybe we get back to Jonnu Smith as a first read more often. Was not a first read until the overtime. And yeah, basically Miami's season is in overtime. They need to win this game against the Texans team that has a schedule after this week, play Baltimore, play Kansas City. They're going to find out where they're at. This is a game for them to get ready for the games that show them can they actually hang in the AFC playoffs this year.
Yeah, and that's why Houston is seen as the teams that, let's say, the Chargers,
Mm-hmm.
let's say the Ravens, let's say the Broncos. Everyone's like, just get that 6 seed so you can play, or you can play against the Texans.
Right.
Get that 5 seed, excuse me, so you can play against the Texans. How do they get on track? Now is the time, not only for fantasy playoffs, Bloom, but now is the time to get hot,
Mm-hmm.
to make a run. Are the Texans one of those teams?
What they're missing is the deep ball to Tank Dell. That's just not in sync. So if the offensive line firms up a little bit, give CJ Stroud a little more time. The running game is there. Of course, Nico Collins is catching everything thrown his way. I do think this is a good week to put Tank Dell in against Miami. And then I mean, this is so simple. And CJ Stroud, not a preferred streamer because of Joe Mixon getting the touchdowns, because Joe Mixon's getting 20 carries a game. And this is, in this case, the week 14 bye was timed perfectly for the Texans because they've been working Joe Mixon pretty hard. Missed a couple games earlier this year with an injury, but certainly you want him to be well rested because he actually has been the key to this offense. And we'll see if they can have some deep passing to balance that out and make this a dangerous offense going into the playoffs.
All right, that is a wrap for part 1 of the Week 15 preview here on the Audible. Cecil Lammey, Sigmund Bloom saying, like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid, and we'll have some better games to talk about on tomorrow's show. And watch on the couch. I like that plug, Bloom. We're getting very, very good at that. So it's radio professional or whatever we're doing here on YouTube. Talking to you, talking to us. Comment on the show, and we love you. We appreciate you. He's Sig. I'm Cease. We are the Audible. Stay tuned and stay frosty.